Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on Farm to School Month, State Policy Resolutions and Proclamations. My name is Helen Dumbalis. I'm the Senior Director of Programs and Policy with the National Farm to School Network. We will give it a moment to let folks continue to join, and then we will get started with the webinar. Again, welcome to folks that are just joining. We are going to give it a few more moments for people to hop on, and then we will begin our webinar for today. All right, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for the September National Farm to School Network topical webinar. Today's webinar is Farm to School Month, State Policy Resolutions and Proclamations. And we thought this would be well-timed as we are gearing up for Farm to School Month nationally to celebrate in just a few days starting October 1st. Before we get started, I do want to go through a few housekeeping reminders. This webinar will be recorded and archived for future viewing in the NFSN resource database. You can go to farmtoschool.org and click on resources to find it. You will also receive a link to access the recording and a follow-up email, as well as links to resources and reports that are shared by our speakers today. All of you as attendees are in listen-only mode. As you have questions, please feel free to enter those in the question box that's on your GoToWebinar control panel. And then we will have plenty of time for Q&A at the end once our panelists have finished their remarks. Feel free to start sending questions in on that control panel, and we'll monitor those to ask our panelists once we get to the end of the session. And then we do hold topical webinars on a quarterly basis. So at the end of, on a monthly basis. So at the end of this webinar, we'll share with you in a moment information on future webinars. So as we go to our next slide, as I mentioned a moment ago, my name is Helen Dumbalis, and I'm the Senior Director of Programs and Policy with the National Farm to School Network, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's webinar. So on this slide, you'll see those webinars that I mentioned. We have next month, October, results from the 2018 National Farm to Early Care and Education Survey. So this is a survey that NFSN has done for 3 cycles now, this time in partnership with our partners at Michigan State University Center for Regional Food Systems. You can learn more about those brand new survey results that are out for Farm to Early Care and Education. And then in November, we have the National Farm to School Network Seed Change and Native Communities Cohort. So this is a project that's been going about a year and a half now with 5 Native communities around the country. So take note of those topics and those details. With that, I am going to go to the next slide and continue with introductions and an overview. So our webinar agenda today includes myself sharing an overview of state farm to school legislation. We'll then hear from Emily English, our partner in Arkansas, about their work on Farm to School Month state proclamations. And then we'll go to Natalie, our partner in Hawaii, to share information about Hawaii's Farm to School Month. And then lastly, as I mentioned earlier, we'll have a moment for Q&A. On the next slide, you'll see there are the photos of your 3 presenters today, myself, Emily, and Natalie. And I'm going to start by giving you a little information. Emily English is an assistant professor in the Department of Pediatrics at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences and serves as the director of the Access to Healthy Foods Research Group at Arkansas Children's Research Institute, where she oversees research and programming focused on increasing access, availability, and consumption of healthy food for kids and families. Emily's interdisciplinary studies, Bachelor's of Arts in Sustainability, Culture, and the Environment, and work on small organic farms led her to pursue graduate studies focused on healthier food systems. She's now received her doctorate and Master's of Public Health from the College of Public Health at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences, and a Master of Public Service from the Clinton School of Public Service. And as I mentioned a moment ago, Emily represents our Arkansas Core Partner organization, and we're excited to hear from her in just a moment. And then Natalie McKinney is the Executive Director of Kokua Hawaii Foundation, or KHF. KHF Aina in Schools program is a farm to school initiative that connects children to their local land, waters, and food to grow a healthier Hawaii. And as the Hawaii Core Partner for the National Farm to School Network and an advisory member of the Hawaii Farm to School Hui, Natalie has worked with governmental, nonprofit, and business leaders to institutionalize food and sustainability education in Hawaii schools and communities. In 2016, Natalie was honored as she should be, as a Kaiser Permanente Honor Roll Champion for her vision, creativity, and collaborative spirit. So these are two exceptional partners of NFSN, and I'm delighted for them to share their experience with Farm to School proclamations and resolutions with you all in just a few minutes. So with that, continue to send your questions in, and we will go ahead and jump into today's content. So I want to start by sharing a bit before we dig into state level Farm to School Month. I want to share a bit about the National Farm to School Month. So the National Farm to School Network worked in 2010 with the U.S. Congress to pass a congressional resolution. So Congress, the Senate, and the House of Representatives in D.C. passed this congressional resolution that designated October as National Farm to School Month. So this was the first time that we had a policy in place that said, yes, we need a national celebration, and we're going to start doing that every October. So since that time, the National Farm to School Network has now led that annual celebration, and we really do it for two reasons. One, we want to build awareness and raise awareness about the many benefits of farm to school. And two, we want to continue to grow the farm to school movement. So giving you that context, going to the next slide, I want to show you all, as we start to talk about state policy, that what we're going to talk about today is specifically around state resolutions and proclamations for Farm to School Month. And that falls under state policy strategies, which is one of three state strategies that NFSN is currently employing as part of our 2017 to 2019 strategic plan. So as you will see here on the slide, the three strategies that NFSN is working on to grow and sustain that movement at the state level are one, state policies, two, state farm to school networks, and three is state farm to school positions. And these are positions that may be housed in state agencies like a state Department of Agriculture, Education, or Health, or it may be through a university extension program. So we won't be talking about state farm to school networks or state positions today, but I did want to make sure you all as attendees know that we do have resources for both of those topics as well as for state policy. And in fact, the networks and positions resources just came out this spring, and we did do webinars in May and June on those two topics. So if you missed those webinars and you want to find out more about state network building or getting positions in place to support farm to school, you can go to our resource database and check those out. So moving along to the next slide then, I want to show you all, this is what we like to call a heat map of state farm to school policy. This comes from that state policy report that was just referenced on the previous slide. And this shows the spectrum of state farm to school policy. So the lightest color being states that lack farm to school legislation, up to the darkest color being what we really like to think of as a gold standard for state policy. I do want to point out for folks who may not have seen the state policy report that this map and the information in the current state policy report covers bills and resolutions through March of 2017. A lot has happened since then, so we are in the midst of working towards releasing another version that'll come out in 2019. So I want to make sure you know that if your state has done something in 2017 or 2018, it may not be reflected yet on this map. So there are many different types, as you can see on that right-hand bar on the slide, many different types of state farm to school policy. And you'll see in a moment on subsequent slides that they require different things, from funding to advocacy support to political champions. We're not going to talk about things that I referenced like that gold standard, the darkest color at the bottom, much today. I will just mention that those things include those coordinator positions. So getting the state budget to commit resources to have a farm to school coordinator, whether part or full-time, in place at a state agency or university extension program. Other things are additional reimbursement or incentive bills. So Michigan, for example, a couple of years ago passed a 10 cents a meal bill initially as a pilot, where schools that serve Michigan fruits, vegetables, or legumes actually get reimbursed by the state 10 cents more for those lunches as a way of incentivizing more local procurement. And then, of course, that has a ripple effect and the impact on supporting the local farming economy. So I want to mention to you all that today we're going to focus on one type of state policy, but there are many of those. So Lacey, if you could go to the next slide then. I wanted to show you all the incredible growth of state farm-to-school policies. And this mirrors, we don't have it on here, but this mirrors the growth in farm-to-school activities. It was in the late 1990s that we just started to see farm-to-school programs pop up, and there's been this growing trend in farm-to-school through school districts and at the state level, and the same has been true for state policy, just this incredible trend, the darker line being proposed bills, the bottom lighter blue line being enacted bills. So there is that discrepancy. There are many more bills being proposed than are actually being passed at the state level, and that's where the National Farm-to-School Network staff come in. We have a policy team that's an available resource. If any of you are thinking about working on state policy, we're here to support you in helping you think through decisions that need to be made about which type of policy and why you're going to make those decisions. So on the next slide, I'll give you a sneak peek of that, and please know that we are a resource. So this is an example of just in the last 3 years, the over 200 proposed farm-to-school policies. Down at the bottom, highlighted in red for you all, are those resolutions or proclamations. So you can see a large number of those have been proposed, and then a large number of those have been enacted. And as you go to the next slide, you'll see that, there we go, you will see they're different, as I described a minute ago, different types of policies, and then there are different needs in order to get those passed. So in that red, that's what we're talking about today. That's farm-to-school proclamations and resolutions. And this is absolutely, it's in the low political advocacy support category, not to say that these are not important. We are doing this webinar because they are, in fact, incredibly important. This is simply saying that they don't cost money the way some of those other things I mentioned earlier do. And of course, if you're asking for a state to pay for something, it's going to require more advocacy effort. It's going to require more champions, more political support. So it's not to say that, but what this is really highlighting for you all is if you're just starting the conversations about state policy, or you're trying to figure out how to really just raise awareness in the state, Farm-to-School Month proclamations and resolutions are a really, really good place to start, because that is, as I described with the National Farm-to-School Month, what Farm-to-School Month is really all about. It's about raising awareness. It's about having a conversation. So if you go to the next slide then, these are some examples of states that have passed these state Farm-to-School Month proclamations and resolutions. Again, a growing number of these in recent years. You'll hear from Arkansas and Hawaii in a moment. And then on the next slide, I'm just going to quickly go through some of the examples that you won't hear about today. So Hawaii, you'll certainly hear about. Natalie will share a lot more on that, but wanted to pull out and show you all that this happened in 2017, also designated in October, just like the national one. And the goal, this is why I wanted this on here to point out, it's about raising that public awareness about farm to school. On the next slide, you'll see Arkansas. So again, you're going to hear more from Emily in a moment. Also in 2017, pulling out some numbers there that Emily, I'm sure, will touch on in a moment. But the reason I wanted to bring this to your attention now is to show, even though it fell on the low political and advocacy support, you can see for the Arkansas Proclamation that a broad coalition of over 10 partners supported that. So Farm to School is all about partners, as all of you know, and that goes for state policy and that goes for proclamations as well. On the next slide, you're going to see Minnesota. Minnesota also, again, 2017, another example for you. I just wanted to give you all some just examples of, and with this one, I wanted to point out how straightforward the language can be. Therefore, the governor of Minnesota proclaiming the month of October 2017 as Farm to School Month. On the next slide, here's Nebraska. So theirs is from 2016. The Center for Rural Affairs, one of our partners in Nebraska, an advocacy partner in particular, requested October yet again. And as we go to the next slide, one thing that I do want to mention is that the national celebration happens in October of every year, as I've mentioned a few times. And the examples that I just shared with you all also are falling in October. That doesn't mean that if you were going to work on a state proclamation, it has to be in October. It may be that a different month of the year based on your growing season is better for you. So just wanted to make that point. And then lastly, as we go to our speakers, I want to make sure you all are aware, since as I mentioned earlier, we just have a little over a week and a half until we start the 2018 National Farm to School Month celebration. So there are many things you all can do to get involved. So you can get informed. We're going to be doing webinars. We'll have special e-newsletters that are going out. There, of course, will be a lot of social media action and conversation. We're going to have blogs on our website, farmtoschool.org. And then we have a national calendar of events, a Take Action pledge, as well as sweepstakes or prizes. So all of those are things that you can access if you go to on our next page, farmtoschool.org/month. And there you can download lots of resources that we have available, that celebration toolkit and activity ideas, posters, stickers, bookmarks, coloring sheets. And of course, as I mentioned, we have that calendar of events. You can find out what's happening in your state and then take that action pledge for the month of October. And then finally, I'll mention, since I have said that Farm to School is all about partnerships, part of what you can do is sign up to be an outreach partner. Here are some of those activity ideas: scheduling a field trip to a farm, a farmer's market, a fishery, or other local food site, serving local food during a meal, inviting an elected official to school lunch. I think this one is important to consider, especially in light of today's topic. So Oregon was one of the original states to come up with a very creative name for something called legislators in the lunchroom. And that's not lobbying. It's simply saying, hi, state senators, state representatives, governors, city council members, just come check it out. Come eat lunch with some school kids, see what it looks like to have farm to school components, to have local meals. So that's a great idea, something that you consider doing. And then, of course, everything that you do, whatever you do at any scale, at any level, because Farm to School Month is all about building awareness and spreading the word, share what you do, pitch it to the media, get it on social media, tell it on the radio, share those stories. So again, today we're going to focus on that state level, but just want to encourage you all to start thinking about what you're going to do next month to help us celebrate nationally. So with that, if you want to go to the next slide, I'm going to pass it to Emily, and Emily is going to share with us information from Arkansas. Thanks.
Thanks for having me, Helen. I am excited to be here and to share kind of the story of Arkansas's Farm to School Month state proclamation process. Let me know if we have any technical difficulties. So thanks for the introduction earlier. Like Helen said, my name is Emily English, and I'm representing our organization as the state core partner here in Arkansas. So myself and Jenna Rhodes serve in that role. And like Helen said, we work for the Access to Healthy Foods Research Group at Arkansas Children's Research Institute, which is also part of our medical school. And the goal of our work is really to build evidence, capacity, and support for an equitable food system that fosters the health and wellness of children, families, and communities in Arkansas. So you can see how Farm to School really fits into that. You can switch slides for me, Lacey. So I'm going to give a brief history of Farm to School in Arkansas, just to set some context for you all. We have kind of documentation of this work happening. We have a long history of agriculture education in Arkansas, but that first kind of farm to school movement work really happened in the early to mid 2000s. Those are kind of our first documented efforts around local procurement and more statewide conversations about school gardens, and you really started to see some interest in that area. In 2009, we were able to bring partners and practitioners and stakeholders together for a conference. And then in 2011, we received some designated farm to school funding, and that's really what launched our statewide initiative. In 2013, we became state partners or state representatives for the National Farm to School Network, which has really helped our kind of statewide initiative grow over the years. And then in 2014, we were able to receive our first Farm to School Month proclamation. And so you can really see how our momentum has grown over the last 10 years, especially with some of that dedicated funding. Next slide. So like I said, 2014 was our first year to have a Farm to School Month proclamation at the state level. So we leaned on the national network's guidance and momentum around those proclamations. And because we work in an institution of higher education and a research institution, we were not allowed to advocate. So like Helen said, we really leaned on our community partners as well, those who did have the ability to approach the governor and request this. We had a kind of a health organization that was made up of community partners, and they had Farm to School as one of their strategic goals. And so it worked really well. And then them in partnership with our Food Corps representatives here in the state were able to kind of lead that effort in its first year. We had guidance from a local policy research organization that had engaged in this kind of proclamation drafting. And we borrowed our language from another state to pull all of that together. And we used that first year to celebrate Farm to School across the state. And we, again, leaning on the national networks, great work and resources, we used their share form and incentivized our schools and practitioners to fill that out through some prizes that we got donated from community partners. Next slide. So we didn't want to lose that momentum. So we've followed it through every year since. So in 2015, we had branded Arkansas Farm to School. We had really grown our outreach and communication across the state. We had established a statewide advisory board. And through that work, we had built a really strong relationship with the Arkansas Agriculture Department. And they have a lot of experience with proclamations. And so we were able to turn the proclamation development process over to them. And they have been the leaders for that since 2014 or 2015. So that also includes, they do a great press release on it, and they pull together some of our strong ag partners. We in 2015, we did leverage that proclamation and Farm to School Month to invite a legislator to school lunch. So the Northwest Arkansas State Senator Bozeman was able to join us for a lunch that day and visit their school garden in the Fayetteville School District. We also included in our proclamation language our state advisory board members, since they had done so much to pull Farm to School along in that year. So the next slide. And then in 2016, we continued to recognize our partners in that actual proclamation language, and again, relied on the Agriculture Department to lead that process. But in 2016, we decided again to use the opportunity to start to distribute some of that Arkansas Farm to School branded material. So you can see in the photo that we have bags and t-shirts, we had developed posters and our logoed material. And so we basically sent out a request via social media inviting schools to register to receive a kit. And we distributed about 50 kits that year. And it was great because it allowed us to track who was participating, and we got a kind of a general overview of what their plans were. Another great thing about Farm to School Month is, our Department of Human Services attributes October 2016 as the kickoff of Farm to School in their agency. So they started using Farm to School Month as a way to celebrate some of the work that was happening with their the organizations that they represent. Next slide. In the 2017 proclamation, we tweaked the language a little bit to include some of those Arkansas specific statistics that Helen shared earlier. We got to a place where if we named every partner who was involved, it was going to make our language too long, so we had to remove it. But they're always at the table, and they attend the proclamation signing if they're able to. So we increased our advertising and promotion of the kits, and we were able to distribute 142 kits last year. So you can see in the infographic kind of how that breaks down. Really ran the gamut all the way from early childhood education years up to high school. And then we also had some alternative education environments that were celebrating Farm to School Month. So we were able to send them kits as well. Last year we added a one-pager with ideas. So those activity ideas that Helen shared, we kind of packaged all of that into one page about how they could get involved with the network, and then what they could do in their school, and included that in the kit. We also printed all the amazing fact sheets and resources that the National Farm to School Network and the USDA have on Farm to School, and included that. using this really as an opportunity to put things in front of our farm to school stakeholders in their school environment. And then we created and shared this infographic as a thank you and report out to the community partners and funders. We shared it via social media. We shared it with our funding agencies. It was really a great way to capture the information and to show the impact of Farm to School Month and those kits going out across the state. We also used this as an opportunity to share a Farm to School Health Impact Assessment report with the governor. Being in front of the governor and his staff has allowed us to be able to pass some of that stuff out over the years, which has been really helpful. And then in this upcoming year, we're pretty excited because we will, you can go on to the next slide, Lacey. We will again be distributing kits, but we are going to add in materials, information, kind of the branded swag from all of our state agency partners. So we've got some new stuff coming in from the Ag Department, from our extension partners, and then also from the Farm Bureau. So we will again collect, kind of schools come in, they register for those kits, we collect information about them, and then this year we're going to follow up with a very brief survey to see what they actually did that's, you know, during Farm to School Month. We have developed a collaborative working group that has a subgroup focused on Farm to School Month. So again, using the momentum, the excitement around a month dedicated to celebrating Farm to School has helped us realize that there is enough need to have a subgroup that really focuses on how we can continue to utilize that time to celebrate Farm to School. So this year we're also going to collect some success stories on social media and be able to turn those into case studies and profiles. And then we're really excited because our farm credit partners, they give out a School Garden of the Year award every year. And so we're able this year to combine the awarding of those contest winners with our proclamation signings. So we're gonna think big checks and smiling kids and a governor and the state capitol. So it'll be a way for us to kind of unify some of the farm to school work going on in the state. All right, next slide. So this is generally the format of our proclamation. You know, we kind of briefly define Farm to School at the beginning, kind of break down some of the benefits, incorporate those Arkansas statistics if they're available. And then we are able to acknowledge partners if we have space. And then that sixth paragraph kind of brings it home by saying, you know, this is part of a national movement. This is part of that national Farm to School Month process. So I just wanted to include that in case folks are wondering what you even put in a proclamation. So next slide. So I'd say that, you know, this is some of the impact work that we've seen because of our Farm to School Month proclamation specifically, and our celebration of the month. You know, it's really allowed us the opportunity to develop a relationship with the governor's office. So Arkansas Farm to School, quote unquote, you know, it kind of puts the movement, it puts us in front of the governor every year, if only for a few minutes. It gives us an opportunity to share our branded materials and to share our reports that we've done. It's oftentimes hard to get that time. And so this is a great place to do that, if only a few minutes. This also brings together our legislative champions and community partners. You know, the governor recognizing a month to celebrate Farm to School and to honor its work. We've seen that it gives our state agency partners, our community organizations, justification to continue to push and support Farm to School, which I think is really important as we all have tons of work responsibilities that creep up all the time. So again, a great way to celebrate stakeholders and practitioners, and a great opportunity for us to get our branded material to, again, spread that awareness about Farm to School out across the state. Next slide. So we've also seen, you know, through some of that growing recognition, we see that the governor has, you know, it's solidified Farm to School in the governor's eyes as a viable intervention, a viable option for health reasons, but also I think for economic development. So here we see that the governor has endorsed this healthy living blueprint for Arkansans, which does encourage the development of a comprehensive Farm to School program and the development of a Farm to School coordinator position. So that is very exciting. And then next slide. We also saw Farm to School encouraged in some state policy that was passed last year. This is really about supporting and encouraging. It's not a requirement, but it is a local procurement act, and But most importantly, it kind of directs the agriculture department to include farm to school in its work. And that's a really great win for us. Next slide. So these are some of the lessons we've learned over the years. You know, again, we are in an education role, not an advocacy role. So some of these direct asks have come from our community partners. So those existing relationships, ones who may or may not have relationships with the governors but can advocate, and then leaning on those who already have great relationships with the governors to ask if they might build on that to include farm to school. We certainly borrowed language from another state. We shared ours with another state a couple weeks ago, which I think is a great way for us to be able to share resources. Again, we've used it as an opportunity to celebrate and to unify those celebrations. We're really excited about pairing with the Farm Credits School Garden of the Year Award contest this year. And again, being in front of the governor every year gives us that opportunity to share farm to school materials and just to grow that presence. Showing up year after year after year lets our leadership know that this is something we care about, and that we're going to continue to honor and to bring forward as an important use of our time and money. So, and then last slide is kind of, these are some of our future ideas, things we've played around with. Jenna had a great idea about creating proclamation kits for schools. So some kind of awesome little kit template where schools and school districts could proclaim their own farm to school month or day or week, and have their own kind of ceremony and a way to really raise momentum and celebration in the school. We will continue to work with our partners to support those policies. And, you know, we'll have to start thinking about that farm to school month kit and distribution. So how do we secure kind of substantial longer term funding for some of those things? And again, we really hope to take those success stories that we collect via social media and turn them into state profiles and case studies. We've certainly figured out that people learn more when they hear from one another. And so how can we take those stories and use them as education tools for similar practitioners around the state? And then last slide, this is all of our archived proclamations going back, I think, to 2015 are on this website if you want to read any of the language, or I'd be happy to pass that along to anyone who's interested. This is Jen and I's contact information. You can find our Arkansas Farm to School on Facebook, and then our website also has kind of all of our resources and available if you're interested. So that is our process. It's been a really good one for us. We're a small state, and I think that is that's one way that I think because we're small and because we all work together in so many good ways, it's made it easier for us to approach our state legislators and our governor about getting behind some of this work. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Emily, for sharing that incredible work. With that, we're going to pass it to Natalie to share from Hawaii.
Aloha, I'm Natalie McKinney. I'm the Executive Director of Kokua Hawaii Foundation. And first, I'd like to set the stage about our educational institutions here in Hawaii. So Hawaii is made up of 8 primary islands. 7 of them are inhabited. You can move to the next slide. And we are one unified school district. We are the only statewide school district in the nation. We're 180,000 students with 256 public schools, 36 charter schools, and those schools span 6 of the 7 inhabited islands. The annual operating budget for the Department of Education is $2 billion, with $1.63 billion of that coming from the state's general fund. Next slide. Kokua Hawaii Foundation, that's the organization that I represent. We are a 501c3 that was founded in 2003 by local singer-songwriter Jack Johnson and his wife Kim, and we support environmental education in the schools and communities throughout Hawaii. Next slide. We have our mission is to provide students with exciting and interactive encounters that will enhance their appreciation for and understanding of the environment so that those children will be lifelong stewards of the earth. Next slide. We have a variety of programs here at the foundation, and they all kind of work together. We have 2 grant programs. One is a field trip grant program where we offer schools up to $1,000 per school year to subsidize the cost of field trips to environmental destinations. And recently we've really been promoting farm field trips. We also provide mini grants to schools. That's an additional $1,000 per school year to help with sustainability initiatives on school campuses. So those mini grants can be used to build or sustain school garden programs, hydroponic systems, aquaponic systems, solar ovens, you name it. We've seen some really amazing programs and initiatives happening across schools throughout our state. We also have 2 waste reduction programs. One is a recycling program, and the other is our plastic-free Hawaii program, where we help to minimize single-use plastics in businesses, schools, and communities. And then the crown jewel here at Kokua Hawaii Foundation is our Aina in Schools program. Next slide. And so Aina in Hawaiian is a word that means land or that which feeds us. And we used the word Aina as an acronym in our program name to stand for Actively Integrating Nutrition and Agriculture in Schools. And the main primary mission of the program is to connect children to their land, water, and food to grow a healthier Hawaii. And we have 3 main priorities as part of that program. One is to address childhood health. The other is to foster environmental stewardship. And lastly, but not finally, is to support a healthy local food system. Next slide. So our program was launched in 2006. We worked directly with 23 Oahu elementary schools. Those schools all participate in our program through our Aina in Schools curriculum. So we've written a K-6 standards-based multi-subject hands-on curricula that includes lessons around nutrition education, garden education, and compost education. So of these 23 schools, all of the 23 schools are implementing the curricula in their schools. Additionally, we travel throughout the state and partner with the Department of Education to offer professional development trainings around our curriculum. So to date, we've trained 206 educators throughout the state from over 250 schools and organizations. And we continue to grow our partnership with the Department of Education. Here in Hawaii, the primarily farm to school programming is all offered up by nonprofit organizations, and I'll speak a little bit about that a little further on. Next slide. So in 2007, the National Farm to School Network was formed. And then in 2010, the USDA launched their Farm to School program, which is really exciting and helped a lot of momentum. And in 2010, we created the Hawaii Farm to School and School Garden Hui. Hui is a Hawaiian word that just means network or group. Next slide. And so this Hui, which was formed in 2010, is comprised of a variety of state agencies, including the Department of Education, the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Health, and then each island has their own network. And so the island of Kauai, under an organization called Malama Kauai, is their school garden network. Kokua Hawaii Foundation's Aina in Schools program is the primary provider on Oahu, which is about 80% of the population lives on this island. The Molokai School Garden Network is run by Sustainable Molokai. On Maui, we have a few organizations that support school gardens and farm to school programming. We have the Maui Island School Garden Network along with Grow Some Good. And then on Hawaii Island, the Kohala Center is the primary network lead there. And Hawaii Island is also the home to our Food Corps service members. Next slide. So when we formed the statewide Farm to School and School Garden Hui, one of the things that we wanted to do was to just develop a baseline. And I'm just sharing this because this is how we kind of started our coalition building and began to ramp up a lot of our resources to be able to advocate for farm to school within the Department of Education. So in 2012, the Hui launched a statewide survey, and we surveyed all schools and asked them if their schools had school gardens, how many number of students participated, how many teachers participated, what percent of acres was dedicated to school gardens. And it really helped us to create this beautiful baseline and help us to see how much farm to school programming was actually happening throughout the state. Simultaneous to this farm to school Hui would meet on a quarterly basis. So we received very generous funding from the Department of Health and continue to do so to convene quarterly. And so each of the different network leads come together on a quarterly basis, and we try to identify initiatives or goals for the network and how we can best achieve those. We were also very fortunate to be able to have a Hawaii Farm to School and School Garden Hui coordinator that was a funded position. And so that enabled us to be able to have someone who was specifically dedicated to farm to school advocacy and programming on behalf of our entire state network. If you could move to the next slide. The Department of Health does a safety and wellness survey that is distributed to all Department of Education schools. And through our coalition building and through our partnership with the Department of Health, we were actually able to get a question on the SAWS, which is the Safety and Wellness Survey. And the question was, does your school have a school garden? And if so, is it used for instruction? And if so, what are those subject areas? So this survey really helped us to be able to leverage advocacy around school garden programming in addition to the survey that we launched. I think having a survey from the Department of Health actually gives us a lot of leverage in regards to speaking to farm to school. So the exciting thing that the last SAWS survey that we have data for in school year 15-16 is that 83% of Hawaii's public non-charter schools have a garden and it's used for instruction. And what we think is the most exciting is if you look at all the subject areas that are listed on the right there, science is the predominant subject area that school gardens are used for instruction. So particularly around moving into STEM or STEAM and a lot of the next generation science standards, we're really able to utilize school gardens as a leverage piece for this science curricula integration. Next slide. So we decided that we were going to try to get the legislature on board with supporting farm to school. And so what we did was in 2013, we went to the legislature and we put forth a proclamation. And proclamations are awesome because they're super low entry. There's no budget or any kind of financial request that is associated with a proclamation. And so this to legislatures really makes it a feel-good proposition. And then the next thing to note here in Hawaii is that we have a, our legislature, you're actually able to go online and submit testimony. And so it's very, very easy to rally people around submitting testimony around bills or proclamations. And so we really utilized our statewide network to send and submit testimony via the online portal around supporting farm to school. So in 2013, the governor at that time was Neil Abercrombie, and he declared October Farm to School and School Garden Month in Hawaii, which was a huge coup for us. And in the proclamation, it was to encourage the citizens of the Aloha State to support the health and wellness of Hawaii school children by participating in activities that heighten the awareness of school gardens and community farms as a successful means of improving the health and wellness of our keiki. In that cute picture in the bottom, those are students from a school in central Oahu. They actually took a field trip to Alun Farms where they grow melons. And each student, when they came back on the bus, had either a cantaloupe and a honeydew melon. And then the next day, those cantaloupes and honeydew melons were processed and served to the entire student body. So that was really fun for the kids. They got to go on a farm field trip And then we also started bringing chefs into the schools. At the top picture there, you see a chef who's making some smoothies with some students. And then at that time, October was also a time when we celebrated Food Day, which I don't think is happening anymore, but we had schools that focused their outreach and family nights around food-related themes in celebration of Farm to School Month and Food Day. Next slide. So in 2014, we were unable to get another proclamation through. Proclamations are a little bit challenging because you have to re-up them every year, and every year the legislature's attention to different priorities change. We were very fortunate in 2015 to have the Lieutenant Governor, Shan Sitsui, announced that he was going to make Farm to School his legacy initiative. Actually, he wanted to make school lunch his legacy initiative. And as I shared before, the majority of the programming around Farm to School has been happening by nonprofit service providers. So it was really exciting when the executive branch brought in the Department of Education School Food Service branch and kind of helped them along in a little more farm to school programming within the procurement part of school lunch. And so in 2015, to help launch kind of his initiative, we got another proclamation around Farm to School Month. And at the bottom picture there, you see Lieutenant Governor Shan Sitsui. He actually invited farmers to the Capitol and had them featured. And so this is one of our local organic farms, Mohala Farms, where they grow a lot of greens and produce. So that was a really exciting time for us when we were really starting to see the top down, the bottom up meeting in the middle. That was really exciting. Next slide. And then in 2016, we actually were able to get a bill passed where Farm to School Month was established as a law in Hawaii. So we no longer had to year after year do proclamations. So we're very, 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 very excited about this. Next slide. And so in 2017, the Department of Education during Farm to School Month featured an entire week where they did local procurement and, where they featured local items on the school lunch menu. That was a really exciting thing. At the bottom there, you see local pineapple. Believe it or not, students in Hawaii on the school lunch, they get canned pineapple that comes from the Philippines. And then you have poi, which is a local staple there, and Okinawan sweet potatoes. So Kokua Hawaii Foundation helped to get kids on farms in October. 2,700 kids went to farms. We brought in 8 chefs into do chef visits with 545 students. We did farmer visits and continued the theme of educational programming around Farm to School Month. Next slide. And so this month, we are going to continue with those events. At the bottom left there, that is Chef Ed Kenny. He's a James Beard Award winner and happens to be on our board. And he goes into schools and does chef visits. The bottom right there, we have the Department of Education that's hosting a Farm to School tent at Children and Youth Day, which is a huge event at the Capitol, where we're going to be distributing free huli. And then up top there, we have a school that's participating in a fundraiser where they are selling locally grown pumpkins, and that's super fun. So we'll be continuing all of these efforts this school year, and happy to share any of the things that we do here with you folks in Hawaii or statewide, nationwide. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thanks, Natalie. And thanks again to Emily as well. You all are just doing incredible work, both on these proclamations as well as on farm to school activity in your state. So thank you all for coming today and sharing your story. We are going to go with our remaining time to questions. We have not seen any questions come in the question box. So as a reminder, you can use the GoToWebinar control panel to type your questions in and send those to us so that we can make sure Emily, Natalie, and myself get those answered for you. So I'm going to start off, something that I was thinking about is the presenters were sharing and I shared earlier is that there is a different option. Some states have pursued when it comes to the length of time for a proclamation or resolution. So one of the earlier examples that I shared mentioned that it was specific to 1 year, but that doesn't have to be the case. So with the National Farm to School Network resolution for National Farm to School Month, it was done once in 2010, then it extends every year. Other examples, of course, at the state level also have that ongoing celebration that's designated just the once. And then other states do it on an annual basis. So that's really up to you all, capacity-wise, advocacy-wise, if you have the ability to go back year after year. Of course, the benefit of doing it every year is that continual awareness building and just gearing people up for additional advocacy. But I think certainly if you just do it once and you have it as an ongoing effort, then you can just focus on celebrating every year and then start working towards other types of policies. And with that, speaking of other types of policies, I wanted to hear, Emily and Natalie, from you all. We saw earlier in the webinar that there are many different types of state farm to school policies. Could you all share with us if there are other policies that your states of Arkansas and Hawaii are starting to work on or have worked on besides the proclamations?
Go ahead, Natalie, if you have.
Sure. So so we actually were able to get a farm to school coordinator position established within the Department of Agriculture. And that happened in 2015. It was a really exciting time for us. And it was around that time that the Lieutenant Governor expressed his interest around having school food be his legacy initiative. And so we have year after year continued to work with the different agencies around implementing and creating farm to school coordinator positions. Now that the Department of Education is on board kind of via the executive level branch, we're directly working with their legislative team to because we have to ask for funding around farm to school coordinator positions, and through all of our work at the ledge on getting the Department of Agriculture position established, we've been able to create really strong relationships with their legislative team. And so we now are working directly with them on when the right time will be, if we even need to go to the legislature for establishing a farm to school program through the ledge. Through our work elbow to elbow with the Department of Agriculture, they've begun to implement and create their own programming, which has been really exciting.
That's great. In Arkansas, you know, we have that Act 617 that supports and encourages local procurement. And so I think there's some conversation happening this fall about, is there another iteration of that? Should it be tweaked in any way? It does not call out schools necessarily in its procurement goals. And so we, again, most of the statewide work that happens here is done by state agencies. So we're all a little bit hamstrung in what we can do. And so I think part of our work is about really drawing in, again, some of those advocacy partners who see this. So we are developing great relationships. You know, we have a great relationship with Food Corps, and again, some of these healthcare organizations, nonprofit organizations, and the Farm Bureau has really indicated some interest in supporting this. They already do a ton of farm to school work. Clearly, their support of Ag Ed and FFA is a lot of, you know, is very present in our state. So I think working towards probably some dedicated funding within a state agency for a coordinator position is the direction we're headed next.
And of note, in Hawaii, when we got our farm to school coordinator position established at the Department of Agriculture, we did not include funding. And so I would highly advise anyone.
Good to know. Good to know. Yeah, so, I mean, and that's part of it, right? Is, yeah, the designated time, for instance, in that act, you know, it says, yes, you should work on this, and yes, a position should work on this, but it did not create a new position to work on that. It just kind of added a little bit more to their plate. So I know they're already taxed, and so again, yeah, getting a new position developed, one with funding, would be ideal. Good to know, Natalie.
Yeah, and thank you both for sharing those updates and tips as well. That I think is certainly helpful to attendees. So I am not seeing that. Yeah, please jump in.
Oh, this is Natalie. I just wanted to note that particularly around the program legislators in the lunchroom and getting your legislators to schools during October, this is a wonderful time to reach out to your local reps as well as your national representatives. It is an election year, and so they are really wanting to get out and meet the people. And so I would encourage all states to really utilize this month to leverage their civil servants to get them out into the schools and to see the amazing programming that's happening, and just have the opportunity to share a lunch or plant a seed or any type of activity around farm to school programming. Right now, it's a really important time for people to get involved. And I think that bringing in our legislators at this time is a wonderful opportunity.
Great point, Natalie, and thank you. Yes, really appreciate that. So I'm not seeing that any other questions come in, and I know we are getting close to the end of time. Actually, here we go. Here's one question. Will we receive a copy of the PowerPoint? So yes, you will. So this is being recorded. So the recording will be sent to you as well as the slides themselves. And if any other folks have questions, please do send those. Otherwise, I just want to remind you all before we hop off about those resources we shared earlier. Again, you'll get all this information in a follow-up email, but for celebrating October National Farm to School Month coming up very soon, just a reminder to go to farmtoschool.org/month to find out more about all those available resources to help you with your celebrations. And then again, I want to remind you, if you are interested in your state in working on state policy, be it a Farm to School Month proclamation or resolution, or another type of state policy, that the NFSN staff team is available to support you with that. So please reach out if you want some support as you consider your various options. So with that, I want to again thank Emily and Natalie for the incredible work you and your partners are doing, and for joining us today on this webinar to share your story. I will also remind you again about those upcoming webinars in October around the Farm to Early Care and Education Survey, and in November about our Farm to School with Native Communities cohort. So with that, thank you again. Have a nice afternoon and happy almost Farm to School month. Thank you, everyone.